What's up guys, it's MTG Matt for you. Today we're doing a big spoiler video because I'm going to cover some remaining cards from June 5th and all the spoiler cards from June 6th, 7th and from today, June 8th. So a lot of cards to talk about. I still going to try to keep it fairly shortly and concise. So let's jump right into it. And we'll just go through them one by one. So there were some cards that I missed from June 5th and we'll just go through them here, starting with Primal Might. It's a sorcery in green for X and a green, and target creature you control gets +X/+X until the end of turn, that it fights up to one target creature you don't control. And I think this is a kind of card which is just barely not good enough, because yes, it's a removal and it bumps your big creature, but I think, I don't know, it's Sorcery Spree, I don't know if it's that good. It may be nice as a finisher. Now that I think about it, you buff one of the creatures really big up, remove your opponent's creature, and then just ram through. So maybe this could be cool in a big green deck, but even then, the fact is simply this takes up a whole card slot, and I think you would basically always be happy here with your Voracious Hydra, and then with this card. So I think this card will just barely not make it in constructed decks. Next up, we've got Llanowar Visionary. 3 mana 2/2 elf druid. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, and you can add green. So a lot of value on one card. I think this card is very good in draft. However, in constructed, the issue I see with this card is that if you want to ram, you want to do so mainly on turns 1 and 2. And although this does also draw you a card, I just think that as a 3-mana ramper, this doesn't bring enough to the table, so I don't think this will make its way into constructed. Next up is a juicy one, Shipwreck Dowser. 5 mana 3/3 Merfolk Wizard with Prowess. So Prowess is now back in standard, and when it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. I think it's actually an excellent card. I think the Prowess part is more of a bonus. It's not the main reason you play this card. But this effect to get an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand at 5 mana on a 3/3 body is really good. Because you can play this together with Thassa to get this enter the battlefield effect repeatedly. And I think it's more powerful than what's it called? Scholar of Ages, which gives you 2 instant or sorceries because 7 mana. Because 7 mana is just so much harder to achieve than 5 mana. And I think that together with Thassa, this card is going to enable maybe some crazy lockdown on your opponent. And look out for this card, there's a lot of potential here. Next up, we've got Reign of Revelation. 4 mana instant in blue, you draw 3 cards and discard a card. What I would like to compare this card with is Chemist's Insight. So Chemist's Insight you pay for, draw 2 cards, also at instant speed, and then you can pay another 4 and discard a card to draw another 2 cards, right? So when you've cast Chemist's Insight twice, you have netted 3 cards, right? Because you drew 4 cards and you discarded 1 card. Here you draw 3 cards, then discard a card, but you only pay 4 mana. And I think if you compare this, especially in decks that maybe want to discard cards, this card is actually really solid, because it just gives you this ability to get through your deck faster instantly, right? Because you draw 3 cards instantly and have to discard a card, but just drawing 3 cards immediately and choosing between those cards is, I think really, really good. And this is a valid option, I think, in blue card draw. Then, speaking of prowess, we've got Jeskai Elder. 2 mana 1/2 human monk with prowess. And when it deals common damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So licensing the creature can get really huge due to the prowess effect. Also helps you loot, right? Maybe you can even use the discard ability if you want to fill your graveyard up with instant sorceries, which is a kind of decks want to do a lot of times. So really cool little card, I like it. Next up, Bad Deal. 6 mana sorcery in black. You draw 2 cards and each opponent discards 2 cards. Each player loses 2 life. So the way I want to look at this card is the following. In black, let's say traditionally, drawing 2 cards costs 3 mana and you lose 2 life. And then having your opponent discard 2 cards costs also 3 mana. You combine this into 1 card, you basically get this card, except your opponent also loses 2 life, so there's some slight upside, and you have 2 cards combined into 1. However, is that good enough? I think there could be a discard type of deck with the new Liliana and other effects, and maybe Bad Deal would find a way in there. Just a critical, how would you say, critical mass of discard effects maybe could be really good. So I don't think this is super good, but maybe can find a home in those types of decks. Okay, so this were the remainders of June 5th. Let's go to June 6th here. Some little spoiler. Now this is a fun little one, Maleficent Scythe. Also excuse my voice because I'm kind of having a dry throat. Okay, so Maleficent Scythe. 2 mana artifact equipment, enters the battlefield with a soul counter, and the equipped creature gets +1/+1 for his soul counter on Maleficent Scythe. And whenever the equipped creature dies, put a soul counter on Maleficent Scythe. Okay, so it has got an equipped cost of 1. So I think one deck that comes to mind is a deck where you have Cauldron Familiar and which is Cauldron in one deck, right? Because it's like a creature every turn, you can attach this to your Cauldron Familiar every turn, make it bigger and bigger every turn, and eventually maybe turn it into an actual threat. And however, the kind of decks that use a lot of Cauldron Familiar effects are usually not the kind of decks that want to win, that try to win with like big beefy creatures. And you repeatedly have to invest 1 mana every turn so that this effect actually makes sense. So I think in the end it's not going to make the cut into decks, but it's a fun little card and I want to try it out because I'm actually not so sure if this equip cost of 1 actually matters. Maybe in aggro type of decks, maybe mono black aggro, you just have spare mana available a lot of the times to use this card effectively. And if so, it's just a very cheap equipment card that can grow in the threat level over time, which is always just some nice value, right? So what I would say about this card is try it out, but not sure if it's going to make the cut. Next up is Tidal Whale. 7 mana, 7/7 whale. Creatures your opponent's control get -1/-0, kind of a random effect. And then you can pay 1 and a blue and discard Tidal Whale, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. I think really good in draft, in constructed not so much. It's strictly speaking better cycle effect, however it doesn't say cycle or cycling, which means this doesn't trigger cycling effects. Yeah, it's just good for draft. Okay, next one is, I really like this card. It's Cryptic Masterpiece. 2 mana artifact. You can tap it and put a page count on Cryptic Masterpiece to scry 1. And you can pay 2, tap it, put a page count on Cryptic Masterpiece to draw a card. And then whenever it has 4 more page counters on it, you exile it. When you do, you gain 4 life. So what I would like to compare this card with Treasure Map from I think Ixalan, which was also 2 mana artifact and would let you scry for 1 mana and tap it, and then eventually would turn into this land that lets you draw cards for sacrificing treasures. And I think this card is very comparable. You don't have to pay for the scry, which is really nice. So you could get 4 scries out of this 2 mana artifact, which is already cool. And then in the end you gain 4 life, right? Or somewhere in between, you can just pay 2 mana to draw a card, which is also just a good rate. So I really like this card. I think it can help control the types of decks really find the cards that they need. Especially the life gain is nice in control types of decks. Really like this card. It's a cool little support artifact in control types of decks. Next up, we have Unmoored Ego's brother or sister. It's Necromantia. 3 mana sorcery, choose a card name other than the basic land card name. It's in black, by the way. Choose a card name other than the basic land card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. The player shuffles the library, then creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way. Now, first thing I want to note is it says any number of cards with that name and exile them. However, that doesn't really matter in Magic because you can only have 4 cards of one. I can't speak English anymore. You can only have 4 times the same card in your deck anyway. So this is basically limited to 4 cards. Just as much as Unmoored Ego is. And I think this is basically just an Unmoored Ego effect. However, dealing with 2/2 zombies might actually, in certain circumstances, be better than your opponent's having your opponent draw cards from exiling his cards with Unmoored Ego. So I think with this card in Standard and Unmoored Ego, maybe there's some kind of critical mass of these cards where it can really mess with your opponent's deck and really just destroy his whole game plan. So I think in standalone, this card is just like Unmoored Ego, just designed very different in a different way. But both combined could really maybe make for an interesting control-y or hate type of deck. Next up is Rewind, kind of an interesting one. 4 mana instant in blue, it's a counter spell. Counter target spell, untap up to 4 lands. So if you have 4 mana open, your opponent plays a spell, you counter it, you untap all the 4 lands used for Rewind, and you just have gained 4 mana basically. And you can use this mana again. However, what I think is that in decks where you want to play a lot of counter spells, for example, mono blue tempo, the matter of fact is that you prefer counter spells that are cheap. They're just really counter spells. You're not looking for upside value. You're looking just for cheap, efficient counter spells. So I don't think Rewind is going to be viable just because of that. And it's very interesting though. Sure, there are some interactions where lands could tap for more than 1 mana, and then you untap those lands and you netted some mana. But I don't think that's relevant. So although this card is interesting, I don't think it's going to be relevant and constructed. Next up, Fungal Rebirth. I like this one. It's a 3 mana instant in green, which says return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If a creature died this turn, create 2 1/1 green cycling creature tokens. So I could see this being played maybe in like a Core Vault deck, right? But in Core Vault deck, you always have something to sacrifice. For example, the Cauldron Familiars of this world. And then for 3 mana, you get 2 tokens and a permanent card from graveyard at instant speed. I think that's really good value, so I think that's a good card. And next up, we've got Adanto Vanguard's little brother. It's Consecrated Veteran. 2 mana, 3/1 white for a Human Warrior. And you can discard a card to tap the Consecrated Veteran. It gets indestructible until end of turn. So a similar effect to Adanto Vanguard, where you would pay 4 life to make it indestructible. However, this effect is actually, I think, a lot worse, because paying life is not as painful or punishing as discarding a whole card. And you have to tap the Consecrated Veteran. You didn't have to tap the Adanto Vanguard. So this is a card that I would give a chance in an aggressive deck. It's nice to be able to give a card indestructible without the need to pay mana. However, I just think that the discarding a card cost is a lot to ask for. Okay, so these were cards from June 6th. Now we can move on to the last 2 days, actually, or today and yesterday. And actually yesterday were just 2 little cards. And then we come to today, and today were a lot of juicy ones, so stay tuned. So from yesterday, Carrion Gob, 4 mana, 0/5 insect. It gets +X/+O, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in your graveyard. And when Carrion Gob enters the battlefield, mill 4 cards. I don't think this creature is going to make the cut into Golgari types of decks, because you're looking for cheap ways. You're either looking for cheap ways to mill your deck, somewhere between 1 to 3 converted mana cost, or if you go higher, you want some really nice additional value, like with what's it called? Knight of Forens? Is it correct? Like the green elemental guy who also mills you and gives you a land card and so on. So even if this gets a 9/5, I don't think that's relevant, because Golgari type of decks don't necessarily win that way. So yeah, I don't think this card is going to be relevant. Other one here is Spiked Megalodon. 7 mana, 500 Shark with Hexproof. Whenever it attacks, draw 1. Hexproof is really nice. I think this is a powerful card in Draft. In Constructed, it's just too costly, and Scry 1 not really relevant, so there you go. Alright, now we got through all the okay cards from the last 2 days, basically, or the last 3 days. And now we're coming to today, and today were some really cool cards, so now let's get into them. Today, I like the cards that were revealed today. So first off, it's Tide Skimmer, 4 mana, 2/3 creature deck in blue with flying. And whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures flying, draw a card. The deck where this would obviously fit in is Azorius Flyers. However, this thing is way too costly. Also in Azorius Flyers, you don't necessarily have problems with drawing cards, so you don't need this effect. And then in the end, it's just a 4 mana 2/3 flying. Not good enough. Next is Face Feathers, 4 mana enchantment aura. You enchant a permanent, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. And the enchant permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can be activated unless they're mana abilities. Now this says enchant permanent, so you can enchant anything. Activated abilities means you could enchant artifacts, for example, or enchantments, or planeswalkers even. But I think this is a nice card in Draft. In Constructed, you just have too many other options to deal with permanents. You have the Banishing Lights, you have the Prison Realms of this world, right? So, cool card in Draft, I think for Constructed, not viable. Okay, next up we got Bolt Hound. 3 mana 2/2 with haste. It's an elemental dog. And whenever it attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay, so cool thing is it's got haste, right? So where you would play this is, I think, a red aggro deck, because there the haste is really nice. And then whenever it attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Now, red aggro decks usually play Castle Embereth, right? This is a Castle Embereth effect, which is pretty good with if you put in your dwarfy guide, it makes every red permanent or every red source of damage hit harder. Maybe this can go into red aggro. Maybe. I mean, if you have white board, this effect is pretty okay or pretty good. And it can attack immediately, so it's other creatures though, so the elemental dog himself doesn't get buffed. Maybe you put this into an elemental deck. I don't know. I don't think this card is like pure garbage because of the haste mainly actually. So you get the effect right away and a 2/2 for 3 mana. Maybe you can try this out in red aggro, but I'm not sure. Oh yes, this art, look at this. It's Selfless Rescue Dog. It's a 1 mana 1/1 white dog, which sacrifices itself so that another target creature you control gets indestructible at the end of turn. A really good little card. We know that Dog Tribal is obviously going to get some support because of the commander creature we've seen supporting dogs. And this effect is just very solid. Giving any creature indestructible at instant speed without any mana cost. Just sacrifices a cute little logo. Really good. If you play this Dog Trial deck, put this guy in there to protect your commander. I think it's a solid card. Next up we got Siege Striker. 3 mana 1/1 human soldier with double strike. Whenever it attacks, you may tap any number of untapped creatures. Gains +1/+1 for each creature tapped this way until end of turn. Yeah, no. Just no. Maybe good in draft. In constructed, you would need a lot of creatures, but then this got double strike, doesn't have trample. So maybe you want to play this in Celeste, and yeah, you just have so many more better options. Just don't play this card. Okay, Leaping Augur, 4 mana star 4 human shaman with trample in red. Leaping Augur's power is equal to the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. Okay. When Leaping Augur enters the battlefield, discard up to 2 cards and draw that many cards. So nice comparison here, by the way, with Crackling Drake, which has a similar effect, also costs 4 mana and is flying. Crackling Drake saw some play, and maybe this could also see some play. It's got Trample, so it has ways to actually take advantage of a lot of power if you've got a lot of instant sorceries in your graveyard. And he can put stuff for you in the graveyard, which is also cool. So yeah, I think it's a solid card. You could try this in these types of decks. Play it in Izzet together with Crackling Drakes maybe. And with Really Everwise, so you draw cards and discard cards. Now, to be fair, this kind of deck didn't really see play in Standard. Haven't tried it yet myself though. And yeah, I think it's a solid creature. But I think, let's put it, I think it's a solid card, solid creature. But the overall deck idea behind it is probably right now not standard viable. Let's put it this way. Okay, next up. 2 mana, blue sorcery, See the Truth. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. If you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, instead put all those cards into your hand. Okay. So just at face value, it's a 2 mana Anticipate, but not an instant, but a sorcery speed, which is bad. But if you cast a spell from your library or your graveyard or from exile or I don't know how, you put 3 cards into your hand, which is obviously really good. Now I wonder. So the thing I have with this card is I think the effect is fairly powerful. 2 mana, draw 3 cards, very powerful. However, the problem I see with this card in Standard is how do you make sure that you can basically decide when you get this effect, right? I think the most straightforward way is if it's in your graveyard and then you cast it with Mission Briefing, for example. then you can actually control this, right? I also wonder what happens if you copy this spell, because the copy is actually not cast from the hand, right? I guess. So, I would put it like this: if there is a deck out there that already utilizes instant sorceries from the library or from the graveyard or from exile in some way or another, this is an excellent card to put in there. Otherwise, it's kind of clunky. You shouldn't build a deck around it, because at the end of the day, it's just card draw. So, if you can fit this in any type of deck that already exists and already is successful, then this is a nice card. Next up, we've got a Mythic rare. Yes, Elder Gargaroth, 5 mana 6/6 beast with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. Yes! 5 mana 6/6 Vigilance, Reach, Trample. It's already good. Whenever Elder Gargaroth attacks or blocks, choose one. Create a 3/3 Green Beast creature token. You get 3 life. Draw a card. Wow. Wow. Okay. This card is just good. It's just really good. It's just good. I mean, the creature itself is already powerful. 6/6 Vigilance, Reach, Trample for 5 mana. And then every effect on it is good in all kinds of situations. You need more creature, you get a free fee for free. You need life, you gain free life. You need card draw, you draw a card. So very flexible creature. Also, it's got vigilance, so it attacks, you get the effect, and then can also block, so that you also get the effect. Just very solid, very good card. Put it in your big green decks. Put it into even like Selesnya decks, right? You can make your board wider with this, or put it into like I don't know, if there is some kind of control deck that uses green, this can basically win you the game by itself in a way, right? Because every time it attacks, the board gets wider. You can gain life, draw cards. So I wouldn't necessarily think of this card as purely a power creep in like a big green deck. I think there's more to this card because it's so flexible. You can utilize it in a lot of different decks. So yeah, watch out for this card. Definitely really good, and you can try it in a lot of different decks. And then, oh, yes. Yes! Revitalize. It got reprinted. 2 mana instant in white. You gain a free life, draw a card. I love this card. So I started playing Magic Arena around the time when I think right before War of the Spark came out, so M19 was still viable then. And Revitalize was in M19, and I just love this card. You draw a card, you gain free life for 2 mana. It's just good value in one card in the decks that need it. Control types of decks, or I used it in like combo types of decks even. Just a cool little card, really, if you look to build like control type of deck and want to fill your 2 CMC spot, put in the Revitalizes, it gives you everything you want, it cycles itself basically, and you gain free life. Good card. Speaking of control decks, Radiant Fountain, land. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and you add colorless mana. Doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, so you can use the colorless mana right away. Also just good value, right? If you're if the decks in your deck, and if the cards in your deck are not too, how can I say, color heavy, so which require multiple specific mana in their casting cost, put in Radiant Fountains is just a free lunch, right? Now this next card, first of the art style, I love it. This next card is crazy. I've got gone over the preview cards just a bit before I start this video, and this card I think is crazy. It's Chandra's Incinerator. 6 mana 6/6 elemental with trample. It says this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. And as I said, it's got trample. And it says whenever a source you control this non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Wow. Wow, I mean this card. You play this in a red deck, you can very reliably cast this for 2 or 1 mana. Then you get a 6/6 Trampler. I mean, really, okay, let's do the math. So, for 5 damage phase, right now in Standard, you need to pay, let's say 4 mana, right? You cast a Shock, and then you cast a, like, if you're lucky, you have a Skewer this, what's it called? Skewer the stage? No, what's it called? Magic, skewer the critics. Skewer the critics. There you pay 2 mana to deal 5 damage. Now I know this is the best case scenario, but it's possible, right? You pay 2 mana, deal 5 damage to your opponent's face, pay 1 mana, get a 6/6 Trampler on the board, and next turn, or in the same turn, if you deal more damage to your opponent's face, this just gets rid of all your opponent's creatures or planeswalkers. I think this card is absolutely crazy. It's crazy good. It's also an elemental, which is just good creature type. Has some kind of support. Yeah, I think this card is actually so good. It is so good. Like, I can't stop repeating it. I'm just baffled by this card. Because, like, the thing is, if you go face with your shocks or anything, right, you always have to choose. Okay, do I shock his face, or am I too afraid if I leave my opponent with too much power on the board, he will eventually overwhelm my aggro deck, right? But with this card, you don't have to choose. You just go face, then you pay 1 mana 6/6 Trampler, which, by the way, usually an aggro deck in red doesn't have access to this kind of power, especially not with trample, in just a raw creature form. And then you have this 1 mana 6/6 trample on the board, and then you still go face, but now you don't have to decide. You go face and then ping your opponent's creatures. I think this card is so crazy good. Watch out for this one, definitely. Wow. And yes, Chandra Planeswalker got confirmed. Now this one was in the leaks. I don't know if I've covered this in my leak video, but yeah. Chandra Planeswalker, Chandra Heart of Fire. Let's look at the loyalty abilities. Starts with 5 loyalty, which is pretty good. +1. Discard your hand, then exile the top 3 cards of a library. You may play cards exiled this way until end of turn. +1, Chandra Heart of Fire deals 2 damage to any target. And -9, search your graveyard and library for any amount of instant or sorcery spells, exile them, then shuffle your library. You may cast them this turn, X6 red mana. Okay, so I know this is a 5 mana planeswalker, right? But because of her 2+1s, I think you can actually play her in aggro deck. In aggro decks, you know, you empty your hand very fast, and then discarding your hand is not a big deal. You maybe, let's say you discard 2 cards, you get 3 cards back, and you can do this every turn. It's fine, right? And so that's good. Dealing 2 damage to any target. Now imagine if you have a 4 brand out there, this deals 4 damage. Really good to any target. And then if you get to the -9, I don't actually think it's that good, because I don't know. In this type of aggro deck, you don't really care about the ultimates. So just the 2+1s are really good. And also what's just really nice is that the Deal 2 damage to end target also gives you loyalty, so it doesn't reduce loyalty. Yeah, I think viable planeswalker in aggro. It's also quite hard to remove, starting with 5 loyalty and just growing every turn while she removes stuff. In decks other than aggro, I think the -9 is actually not great. In decks other than aggro, I don't think she's viable. Even if you make like a big red deck with Chandra's Regulator, she doesn't fit into a big red deck because of this discard effect, and then you basically just have a 32 damage to the target. So aggro deck's fine, other than that, no. Man, look at this card styles. Awesome. Chandra's Magmut. 2 mana, 2 to Elemental Dog. Tap it, Chandra's Magmut is 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. It's a dog, so this could be relevant. Other than that, I don't think that's good, just because it doesn't hit creatures. That would probably be too powerful, but no. And then we've got an Elemental Lizard. Chandra's Pyroling. 2 mana, 1 for Elemental Lizard. Whenever source you control is non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Pyroling gets +1/+0 and double strike on the end of turn. Damn. Okay, so you have the Pyroling. Combine it with the Incinerator. Okay, look, you have the Incinerator on the board, right? You hit your opponent in the face with your burn spells. Your Incinerator gets rid of all your opponent's creatures this way. And now you're Chandra's Pyroling. Let's say you hit your opponent with 2 burn spells. Now this is a 3/3 with double strike. And boom, you get in there for the 6 damage. I think Chandra's Pyroling together with the Chandra Incinerator, this could by itself make a deck. Like for real. Put these 2 into a deck with burn spells. And you know what? Throw in a Torbrand while you're at it. I think that's pretty powerful, and I think now that I just think about non-combat damage, maybe a nice 1-drop in that deck would be there's this Goblin, and when you tap it, both players take 1 damage. It's also in a defender. Is it Goblin's Cure or something like that? Goblin's Cure. Magic. This guy, Spare Spear. 1 mana 0/2 defender. Deals 1 damage to each player. Huh? Still standard legal. May you put this into the stack, deal non-combat damage, and be happy. Yeah, I mean, seems pretty powerful. You can also throw in your Chandra Spitfire. Yeah, get your Incinerators, Pyrolings, and Spitfires into 1 deck. Maybe even with Cavalcade of Calamity. Ooh, Cavalcade of Calamity just got buffed even. Wow. Wow, I think we have some really juicy deck coming here with non-combat damage in red. Wow. Okay. Next up, we've got Basri's Lieutenant. 4 mana 3/4 Human Knight with Vigilance and Protection from Multicolored. Some protection is nice. Multicolored is worse than monocolored, but better to have it than not, right? When Basri's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So just on face value, this is basically 4 mana, 4/5 in stats. And Vigilance, Protect from Multicolored. And then whenever Basri's Lieutenant or another creature you control dies, if it had a 1/1 counter on it, create a 2/2 White Knight creature token with Vigilance. Okay, so this card is very nice to protect you from board wipes if you build your deck in the right way around it, right? if you somehow to manage to get a lot of 1/1 counters on your creatures, I don't know, let's say with Heliod or just with white board effects that give you 1/1 counters, maybe you want to play this in a Selesnya deck. Mono white, not so sure, but I think there is definitely potential here because it's just the nice thing is really that your opponent plays the Shadow the Sky. If your dudes all at 1/1s, you get 2/2 white knight creature with vigilance, very powerful. Or how about this? You play your Venerated Loxodon, right? You convoke your creatures, they all have 1/1 counters, and then you play your Lieutenant as a protection. I think really, really good actually. You can play this together with the Moth from Ikoria that brings your stuff back. It's just a nice borderwide protection, and I think the fact that if you build your deck the right way, so that you can make sure that your creatures a lot of the times have 1/1 counters, the effect of this Lieutenant is immediate, right? Because you slam it on the battlefield, and then the effect is there immediately if your opponent shatters the sky. So, good card, just by itself. 4-mana 3/4 Vigilance Protect for multicolored, okay. And you gotta put a 1/1 counter on an entire creature. So, basically you're almost guaranteed to get a 2/2 knight out of this. Pretty solid, pretty solid. And then, you know what, while we speak of this card, let's jump to this card, Basilisk Solidarity. 2-mana Associate Right, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Now, there are effects right now which give all your creatures 1/1 counters. There is one in Selesnya which never gets played for 3 mana. And then there's obviously, what's it called? Also for 3 mana and white. Unbreakable Formation, which gives you all your creatures 1/1 counters in the main phase. This value is the same because you can't use the source at instant speed. And but Unbreakable Formation also gives the creatures vigilance and indestructible. So I'm not sure. I could imagine that 2 mana instead of 3 mana for such effects is just the right breakpoint to make it viable. And obviously it has direct synergy with Basilisk Lieutenant. That's why I guess they're both named like this. Not sure about this one. Not sure. 1/1 counters are nice. Maybe you can throw the Ozolith in that type of deck, right? I don't know. In these aggressive in these aggressive type of mono white decks or even Selesnya decks, you're always concerned about building a big board. And imagine you have this in your starting hand. When are you going to use it the earliest? I think the earliest use it is on turn 3. If you manage to get 3 dudes on the board by turn 3, you play this, and then all of them get a 1/1 counter. But then again, on turn 3, couldn't you do something better? I don't think this card is good enough, because if you don't have a board, it just doesn't do anything. And then, so with this downside that it doesn't do anything if you don't have the board, the effect needs to be really good. And then I think the Unbreakable Formation is just better. But then again, it's really cheap. I think you need to try this out. You can't just tell from reading this card. Okay, now we have a nice Planesart and Basilisk Acolyte. I think this one was in leaks. Nothing too exciting. Basilisk Cat was also in the leaks, so we already know this card. Not going to go into this. And look at this. Solemn Simulacrum. It's back. It's reprinted. It's awesome. So for those of you who don't know, 4 mana 2/2 artifact creature golem. When it enters the battlefield, you may search the library for a basic land card, put the card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library, and when it dies, you draw a card. It's 3 cards in 1 creature. You get a 2/2 creature, a land on the battlefield, and you draw a card. lot of value, very powerful. You can put it in any deck where you need it. Just a very powerful card. And then 3 more left. We actually already covered Massacre Worm, so we won't cover that. So we only have 2 left now. It's Village Riot. 1 mana in black, instant. As an additional cost, cast spell, sacrifice creature, draw 2 cards. I think that's good. That's really good. If you put this in the right deck, you don't care about sacrificing creature. You might even want to do that. Rakdos Sacrifice. And it's instant speed. I think this is a really good card. And then last card for today, Pestilent Haze. 3 mana sorcery, choose 1. All creatures get -2/-2 end of turn. Or remove 2 loyalty cards from each planeswalker. I think this is a strictly better Cry of the Carnarium. Or is it? So Cry of the Carnarium also gives all creatures -2/-2, but they get exiled if they die, which is a lot better than destroying them. However, this is a bit more flexible with those loyalty counters. So I think Pestilent Haze, depending on the meta, if there are not too many dying effects, this is a strictly better Cry of the Carnarium. And with that being said, I think a lot of new exciting spoiler cards. Let's see, we've got 64 cards revealed so far, so a lot more to come. Basically, we're just like 25% through the whole set, so really cool stuff. Stay tuned, and I'll see you guys on next video.